Well, having just spoken with Graham, it's now a real privilege to be able to speak to his wife, Christine. Hi, Christine.
Hi, nice to have you here. Really pleased that you could be in our garden.
And lovely garden it is, I must
Thank you
say.
very much.
Yes. Apart from, as always happens when we're videoing, there's some ambient noise. And I'm not sure if the video is going to pick this up, but we've got a chainsaw buzzing away in the background, so we'll see how we get on. So thank you anyway, Christine, for agreeing to do this. And, you and Graham are just about to come into membership. We've not had the opportunity to spend much time together with church being in lockdown. So it's really great to have the time now just to chat with you, just to get to know you a little bit.
Thank you.
So Christine, let's start as we do always with just tell us a bit about your early life and where you grew up.
Okay, right. Well, my family were Londoners, and I was born actually in the University College Hospital in Tottenham, and surrounded by students apparently. And we lived for the first 7 or so years of my life there, and then my family moved us out to Essex to Canvey Island, and which is sort of in the Thames estuary, not too far from Southend-on-Sea. And so I grew up there and attended Canvey Methodist Church. My parents were very, very active members there, and in fact my brother is still there at the same church, and he has recently been appointed as a local pastor in his retirement at Canvey Methodist Church. So we do occasionally visit still over there. Obviously I grew up and then I started working in Southend-on-Sea in the post office telephones drawing office, and it was indirectly through that I met Graham, because I attended the Christian Union there, which actually was a fairly boring meeting, but it sort of got a little bit livelier when he started coming. And so obviously that was the start. That's how we met, and eventually we got married. We settled on Canvey Island for the first few years of our marriage, had our first child, and then Graham felt the call into the ministry, so we had to move to London so that he could go to Spurgeon's College. So that was the early part of my life. Since then, once the children got older, I've always been very involved in the church, not being necessarily a traditional minister's wife, but my main areas of interest have always been working with children and music, and so I've done that in various guises really over all of the years. Got involved with a local primary school and did some music in there with them, and latterly did a fair bit of piano teaching as well from home and in other people's homes. So that's me in a nutshell.
So Christine, you mentioned there that you were part of a young people's fellowship group. Perhaps you'd just like to tell us a little bit about how you actually came to become a Christian, how you came into faith.
Well, as well as belonging to Canvey Methodist Church, I had a school friend who I met when I went to secondary school, and she actually went to a Brethren church in a different place, because she didn't live on Canvey like I did. She lived in a place called Thundersley, and she went along to Thundersley Gospel Hall, and they had a young people's Bible study group on a Tuesday called Key Nights, and she took me along to it, and it was very, very deep Bible study, and I was only 11, 12, 13 at the time. So I can't imagine today's young people of that age actually doing what we did, but I learnt all of my very basic Bible knowledge through that, and I'm entirely grateful really for that group, and it was a real growth for me. But I did notice that I felt that it was different to the way my faith had been presented to me through my home church, and I was a bit challenged by it. And what happened when I was about 14, we were all taken away on a camp up in Yorkshire to Robin Hood's Bay, and it was a Christian youth camp, and that was where I made my commitment to Christ, actually at that camp there. Then subsequently from that, I think a couple of years later, I was still going to this same Bible study, so I was 16 by then, and we did a section on baptism. And so I was challenged by that. And of course my home church didn't do baptism by immersion. I'd been christened as a baby, but I really wanted to be baptised. So it was really through being in that group I was baptised at Thundersley Gospel Hall at the age of 16.
So I know how busy you must be supporting Graham actually often in some of the things that he's involved in, as well as you say, youth work that you've been involved in yourself. But I wonder what sort of things you enjoy doing in your spare time.
Right, yes, well, a number of things really. As Graham has already mentioned, I do really enjoy gardening, and moving here, the garden was very beautifully laid out anyway, but we've done quite a lot to it ourselves. I also play the piano, and last year, for a particularly significant birthday, Graham actually bought me a small harp, which I didn't know was coming, so it was a lovely surprise. And I've started to teach myself. I haven't been able to find a teacher. I've done a little bit, but not a lot. But maybe I shall do a bit more of that in the winter when I can't do the gardening. So yes, the music. I used to do a little bit of art, but not so much of that recently.
So you mentioned the garden there. Obviously, the COVID situation and lockdown gave you opportunity to be in the garden. But in what other ways did it affect you?
Well, I think really probably Graham has covered most of that, because we were both affected in the same way, really. I think it was not being able to pick up my baby grandson and cuddle him. That was quite hard. We were able to go and meet up socially distanced after a little while, but it was very hard because the baby couldn't understand that he couldn't run up to Nanny and have a cuddle, so that was quite tricky really. I think as well, contrary to a lot of people, I quite enjoy going to the supermarket and just buying a few things in and then going for a coffee, and I did miss doing that. We couldn't get a delivery. We tried very hard to get online deliveries. We couldn't, so we did a couple of click and collects. But then in the end, I thought, I'm just going to go to the supermarket. So in Wareham, there's a small Sainsbury's, which was fine. I didn't feel at all really at risk by doing that. So everything else, I think, really Graham has covered.
So, Christine, there's a piece of scripture you'd like to share with us, and perhaps your reason for choosing it today.
Well, my scripture is actually from Psalm 139, and I'll read it and then I'll explain why. So it's verses 9 to 11. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, your right hand will hold me fast. And those particular verses have a lot of significance because our son, he was travelling in Australia and he met an American girl and he wanted to marry her. So eventually, of course, he left us, got on a plane, flew across the sea and settled in America. At the time, he wasn't a Christian, and obviously we prayed and prayed and prayed that he would come to know the Lord. But I knew that scripture, and I thought, well, God's not going to let him go, even though he's risen on the wings of the dawn in the east and flown over to the west and settled him in America. God is there and he'll look after him. Well, the years went by and unfortunately our son's marriage didn't last. But during that very difficult time when his marriage broke down, that was when he found the Lord. And he's since married another wife who is a very committed Christian. They're both serving the Lord in their local church, and our son is now on the leadership team of that church. So we really feel that, God has taken hold of him and blessed him. So the verses are very significant to me for that reason.
That's lovely. That's great. Christine, thank you so much just for taking a few moments of your time today and just talking a little bit about yourself in a way that we can get to know you as you're coming to join us in our church community as you and Graham become members. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Paul.